I never believed love could survive distance. To me, distance meant silence, forgotten promises, and feelings that slowly faded like old photographs. But everything changed the day I met Ethan. It started on an ordinary evening, scrolling through a writer's forum where strangers shared their deepest thoughts. I wasn't looking for anything, just a distraction from my lonely routine in Boston. But then I stumbled upon a comment that felt like it had been written for me. It was simple, poetic even. Sometimes the person we dream of lives oceans away, but their words reach us faster than any flight could. The username was EthanMiles87. I replied without thinking. That reply became a conversation. That conversation became a habit. And that habit became the only part of my day that truly felt alive. Ethan was from San Diego, a photographer who traveled often. He said he loved capturing quiet moments, the way sunlight touched someone's face when they weren't posing, or the reflection of city lights in the rain. His words made me see the world differently, like beauty was hiding in places I had stopped noticing. We started calling each other every night. Sometimes we'd talk until dawn, voices soft and tired but unwilling to say goodbye. I told him about my small apartment, the smell of coffee I brewed to fight loneliness, the way I wrote stories but never had the courage to publish them. He told me about his long drives by the ocean, his mother's garden, his dream of opening an art studio one day. Somehow, even miles apart, we built a world together, made of words, laughter, and the kind of honesty that only happens when you're not afraid to be seen. But love through a screen is complicated. There's always that moment when the heart wants more, when voices aren't enough, when the absence starts to ache. I remember the night it hit me. He had just sent a photo, the sunset over the Pacific, golden light melting into the sea. He wrote, "I wish you were here to see this." And I whispered back, "Maybe one day." That one day came faster than I imagined. It was a cold Friday night when he called, excitement trembling in his voice. "Lena, there's a photo exhibition in New York next month. They accepted my collection. I'll be there for a week." I froze. New York was just a few hours away. My heart started racing so hard it felt like it might burst through my chest. He hesitated. "Would you come?" I wanted to sound calm, but my voice cracked. "Yes, I'll be there." The next few weeks felt unreal. I counted the days, replaying every conversation, every laugh, wondering how it would feel to finally see him in person. Would it be awkward? Would he look the same? What if the connection that felt so real online vanished under real light? When the day came, I barely slept. I wore the blue dress he once said he liked when I sent a photo months before. My hands were shaking when I got off the train at Grand Central Station. The city was loud, full of people rushing somewhere. But for me, the world had slowed down. Every second felt heavier. We met at a small cafe near the exhibition hall. I saw him through the window first, his familiar smile, the one I had memorized through photos, now real and alive. He stood up the moment he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he just walked toward me, wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "You're real." I laughed and cried at the same time. "You too." It was strange, he didn't feel like a stranger at all. Felt like coming home. The hours flew. We walked through the streets, holding hands like we'd done it forever. He showed me his photographs at the gallery, portraits of strangers, streets bathed in golden light, and one photo I hadn't seen before. A woman's shadow on a window, her hands holding a cup of coffee. "That's you," he said softly. My throat tightened. "When did you take this?" "The night you told me about your apartment window." I imagined it, then captured what it felt like to miss you. That night he kissed me for the first time under the yellow lights of the Brooklyn Bridge. And in that moment, distance didn't exist anymore. The world felt small enough for us to fit inside it. But love isn't a fairy tale. It's a choice we have to make again and again, even when it hurts. After that week, reality came crashing back. He had to return to San Diego. I had to stay in Boston. The silence of the airport that morning felt heavier than any goodbye I had ever said. I watched him disappear through security, and it felt like a part of me went with him. For a while, we tried to pretend nothing had changed. Calls, texts, late-night messages, it all continued. But slowly cracks started to appear. He was always on the road for work, and I started a new job that consumed my time. There were missed calls, delayed replies, little moments where I felt him slipping away. One night, after 3 days without hearing from him, I sat in the dark staring at my phone, wondering if love was supposed to feel this lonely. Just when I was about to give up, my screen lit up. A message from Ethan. Lena, I'm sorry. Things have been crazy here. But I miss you. More than you can imagine. I wanted to believe him, but something inside me whispered that love through distance only survives when both hearts fight equally hard. Weeks passed. One evening, I received a package in the mail with no sender name. Inside there was a photo. A breathtaking shot of the ocean at dusk with a note attached. When you feel far away, look at this. The same sun that sets for you rises for me. We're under the same sky. I cried for hours, because even though we were apart, he still found ways to make me feel close. Then a month later, everything changed again. He called one morning, voice trembling. Lena, I got an offer. A 6-month photography project abroad. It's in Europe. My heart sank. That's amazing, I said, forcing a smile he couldn't see. But it means we won't see each other for a while. I know. We both went silent. The truth hung between us like heavy air. Finally, he whispered, Do you think we can make it? And I answered with the most honest thing I could say. If love is real, distance can't stop it. Right. He didn't reply, but I could hear him crying softly on the other end. The next months were the hardest of my life. We kept in touch, but time zones made it difficult. Sometimes his messages arrived when I was asleep. Sometimes I woke up to photos from places I'd never been, Paris, Prague, Rome. He always wrote small captions. Wish you were here. I started to feel like I was living in two worlds. One filled with routine and loneliness, and another made of his distant memories. Still, I held on because I loved him and because I believed love like ours deserved to survive. Then came the day I almost gave up. It was late winter. I was walking home from work, the city wrapped in snow. I passed a couple laughing under a streetlight, and something inside me broke. I realized I hadn't felt his touch, his presence, in so long that it started to feel like a dream I couldn't wake from. When I got home, I sat by the window and wrote him a long message. I told him I loved him, but I couldn't keep waiting for someone who might never come back. I cried as I pressed send. For 2 days there was silence. Then my phone rang. It was him. Lena, his voice was raw. I can't lose you. I'm coming home. I froze. What do you mean? I canceled the rest of the project. I realized none of these cities matter without you. I didn't know what to say. My chest filled with warmth and fear all at once. Could love really be enough? Could it survive all this time apart? He laughed nervously. Just wait for me at that cafe. The one in New York. I whispered, I'll be there. That night I couldn't sleep. The memories of our first meeting came flooding back. The way he smiled, the way his hand felt against mine. I knew that if he really came, everything would change again. And that's where my story takes another turn. Because when love crosses oceans, fate always demands something in return. The cafe looked exactly the same as the day we first met. The same warm lights, the same smell of roasted coffee beans, the same corner table where our story began. I sat there with trembling hands, staring at the door every time it opened, afraid that maybe I had dreamed the call, that maybe he wouldn't come. But then, I saw him. He walked in wearing a gray coat, hair slightly messy, eyes scanning the room until they found me. That smile, it hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds after a long storm. He walked fast, almost running, and when he reached me, he didn't say a word. He just pulled me into his arms. I felt his heart racing against mine. I told you, he whispered, voice breaking. Distance couldn't stop us. I laughed through tears. You really came. I had to, he said. Every photo I took felt empty without you in it. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Then we sat down, both nervous and overjoyed. He looked older, maybe a little tired, but his eyes still held that quiet warmth that made me fall for him in the first place. He told me everything. How he realized that chasing success meant nothing if he couldn't share it with someone he loved. How every night in Europe, he'd find himself staring at his phone, scrolling through our old texts, hearing my voice in his head. I told him how lonely I'd been, how I tried to be strong, but sometimes I whisper his name into the night just to remember what it felt like to say it. We talked for hours until the cafe closed around us. When we finally stepped outside, snow was falling soft and slow, covering the city in white silence. He reached for my hand and I let him. For the first time in months, everything felt right again. He spent the next few days in New York, and we tried to make every moment count: morning walks, late-night talks, quiet kisses between laughter. It felt like the world had given us a second chance. But love, even when it's real, needs more than feelings. It needs direction, courage, a plan. On his last day before returning to San Diego, we sat by the river. The skyline glowed behind him, lights reflecting on the water. "I don't want to lose you again," he said. "Then don't," I replied softly. He took my hands. "Come with me." My heart stopped. "Ethan, move to San Diego. We'll start over there. I'll help you find a place you can write, I'll shoot. We'll make it work." I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to. But reality screamed in my head. My job, my apartment, my unfinished dreams. I can't just leave everything behind. He nodded slowly, eyes filled with understanding and pain. "I know. I just needed to ask." The next morning he left again. But this time it wasn't goodbye. It was see you soon. We promised to visit each other more often, to keep our worlds connected no matter what. And for a while it worked. We met every few months, sometimes in his city, sometimes in mine. Each reunion was like a movie scene. Airports, tight hugs, stolen kisses, whispered promises. But every departure tore me apart a little more. Then came the turning point, the night he called me from an unfamiliar number. "Lena," he said breathlessly, "I just got offered a permanent position here. But they want me to settle down, open a studio." "That's amazing," I said. He paused. "It is. But it means I can't keep traveling as often. And I can't ask you to keep waiting." Silence filled the line. I could hear the fear in his voice, the same fear I felt. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying, maybe it's time we decide if love is worth the distance." My throat tightened. "And what do you think?" "I think," he whispered, "love deserves a chance to live in the same place." After that call, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my apartment, looking at all the little pieces of my life. My books, my coffee mug, the plants I'd kept alive just because he liked them. Every object felt temporary, meaningless without him. That's when I made my decision. 2 weeks later, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and bought a one-way ticket to San Diego. I didn't tell him. I wanted it to be a surprise, a moment that would rewrite everything we'd lost. The flight felt endless. My heart beat so fast I could barely breathe. When I landed, I took a cab straight to his photography studio, the one he'd just opened. Through the glass window, I saw him arranging frames on the wall. He looked peaceful, focused. And then, as if sensing me, he turned. Our eyes met. For a second, he froze. Then his face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. He ran to the door, opened it, and before I could say anything, he lifted me in his arms. "You're here," he said, voice trembling. "I told you," I whispered. Distance couldn't stop us. He kissed me, and everything that had ever hurt suddenly made sense. Every sleepless night, every lonely morning, every airport tear. They had led us here. The next months were like living inside a dream. We built a life together, slow and honest. We worked hard, he opened his studio, and I started writing again. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, just watching the sunset from our balcony, holding hands, saying nothing. Because sometimes love doesn't need words, it just needs presence. But real love, the kind that lasts, isn't always perfect. We had arguments about work, about time, about how to blend 2 separate lives into one. There were nights we went to bed angry, mornings we apologized through tears. But no matter how hard it got, we never walked away again. One evening, as I watched him editing photos in his studio, I realized something profound. Love isn't about the moments you spend together. It's about the space you create for each other to be free. Distance had taught us that. It had made us stronger, patient, and grateful. Months later, on a quiet summer evening, Ethan surprised me with a trip back to New York, the city where it all began. He took me to the same cafe. The lights were softer this time, the air warmer. We sat at our old table, laughter filling the space where once there had been nervous silence. Then, as I reached for my cup, I noticed something shining inside it. A small silver ring. My breath caught. When I looked up, he was already on one knee. "Lena," he said, voice shaking. From the moment I found your words online, you've been the story I never want to stop telling. You crossed every mile, every fear, every doubt to find me. So now I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to wait for me again. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, I whispered, before he could even ask. 1,000 times yes. The cafe erupted in applause, but all I could see was him. His trembling hands, his teary smile, the warmth in his eyes that had carried me through every lonely night. We kissed, and it felt like every chapter of our story folded into that single moment. Proof that love isn't about proximity, but about persistence. Later that night, we walked by the river again. The same city, the same bridge, the same quiet magic. He looked at me and said, "Do you remember when we thought distance would break us?" I smiled. It didn't. It built us. He nodded, brushing my hair from my face. You know what I realized? Distance doesn't test love. It reveals it. We stood there, watching the city lights reflect in the water, two hearts that had traveled miles just to end up side by side. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because love had proven itself stronger than fear, stronger than distance, stronger than doubt. We went home that night, not as two people trying to hold on, but as one story finally complete. Looking back now, I understand that love was never about how often we saw each other. It was about how deeply we believed. Distance didn't break us. It shaped us into something unshakable. It taught us patience, trust, and the courage to choose love, even when it wasn't easy. If you've ever loved someone far away, don't lose hope. Because when two souls are meant to meet, no ocean, no time, no silence can keep them apart. Sometimes love doesn't find the shortest path. It finds the truest one. And ours was worth every mile,